Hello, everybody, and welcome back to WCAT the Den. I'm Ethan.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Luca.
And Matt, what are we going to be doing today?
Talking about sports.
Thank you. This is our 15th episode, and we're back with Luca again. And we're going to be just talking a little bit more about NFL because that's really the more news. But we actually got some NBA news, too, we're also going to be covering it. But we're going to be starting with the NBA news. It's going to be the Bulls cleaning the house. Then we're going to move on to the Brandon Cooks being traded to the Texans. And then finally, we're going to finish it off with, I believe it's going to be the whole Chistian McCaffery signing or extension for him. He's now the highest paid running back. So stay tuned for our opinions then. But without further ado, we'll be starting off with the Bulls.
All right. So, Ethan, I'm going to come at you first. Now that the Bulls have cleaned the house, will they be playoff contenders next season?
I'm going to be straight up with you. No way, Jose. There's no way this team is going to be anywhere near the playoffs anytime soon. This team has gone full rebuild mode for a very, very long time. Ever since it all started back in 2015 when they were already struggling after they've gone through three coaches. They started off with God, excuse me for my pronunciation. God, I can't think.
Tom Thibodeau.
Thank you. So I don't watch the NBA as much as possible, but he has been there since 2015. They had him. He got fired, and then later that spring, so to speak, or summer, they got rid of D Rose. This is the end of the D Rose era in Chicago when he got traded to New York. That was really the symbolism for this that the end of an era and the D Rose era for the Bulls, and it was from there that these Bulls have been struggling very, very bad. After that trade with Rose, they still had Jimmy Butler. They tried to bring in D Wade. They tried to bring in Rajon Rondo. They had the three of them. That was a disaster. They barely survived. All three of them, I believe Jimmy was traded literally a year from when Rose was traded, and they just went complete full rebuild mode from there. That's when they started getting players like Zach LaVine. That's when they got their draft picks from Minnesota and that Butler trade. That's where they got Lauri Markkanen. And it was from there that they began to continue to try and get this rebuild going, get some new rookies in there. But these rookies have not really been turning out. Yes, they got Kobe White. Yes, they got Lauri Markkanen. But Lauri Markkanen has kind of been a bit of a bust. He has not been into the star that they've been hoping he'd turn into. And then other players like
well, that's because of Jim Boylan.
Yeah.
That's why.
Yeah, Jim Boylan.
Yeah, Boylan
they
sucks.
Three head coaches. Their system is obviously not working. Players like Zach LaVine are trying to leave. It's just a disaster. And when people are wanting out of your city and you're telling them they're going to try and make the playoffs, that is definitely not going to be the right thing for any team looking to make the playoffs, especially when you're firing your GM, you're firing your vice presidents of operations, you're going to hopefully soon fire Jim Boylan, and then whoever else they're going to be firing. So I see this team tanking for at least another 2 or 3 more years before they even get a winning season under their belt, because they got to find someone that's actually willing to want to play for this Chicago city, because at the moment there's not really many people that want to stay.
All right, I think that the Chicago Bulls are just stuck in a hole right now that they cannot dig themselves out of. You know, you've got players like Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen, who, as you mentioned, have not really progressed to their fullest potential, we believe. Zach LaVine is definitely the star of this team. Markkanen just has no defensive skill at all. Wendell Carter Jr. can't stay healthy. Really, this entire team can't stay healthy. They still have not started Kobe White, which for some reason I don't know. And this team just lacks the necessary talent that it takes to make a playoff run. You look at every other team in the Eastern Conference that's even just a little bit on the border with like the Nets and the Magic, and at least they still have star players that can keep their team looming around for at least the next couple of years. And I don't see any contingency plans for the Bulls at all, because when Zach LaVine gets out of here, which I think will only be a matter of time, they will legit have no one, and they'll turn into the new age Charlotte Hornets, who have their best player is Terry Rozier. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Hell no, this team's not going to be good in the next year. But I can say this, they'll be relevant again. The last time the Bulls were relevant was probably when Derrick Rose hurt his knee. And when Bobby Portis and Nikola Mirotic punched each other in practice. That's the only time the Bulls make headlines. So hopefully this next season they will be more relevant. They ain't making no playoffs. So let's start with this. Talking a little bit about history like Ethan did. Yeah, they enjoyed a very successful run at the turn of the decade into the mid-2010s as they made the playoffs 7 straight years and 8 out of 9. That was pretty impressive. I'm not going to lie. However, the bottom fell out when the franchise went I'm going to read these, 27-55 in 2017-2018, 22-60 last year, and they were just 22-43 when the NBA suspended its season this year. So this team is not improving whatsoever. They look like garbage when they're playing good teams like the Celtics. But I don't know what's going on with this franchise. I hope they can figure something out. You talk about Fred Hoiberg when he got fired December of 2018 after the 3+ campaigns. And then you hire Jim Boylan, who just went 39-84 in his place, and he was very, very confident in his job security, which he reported to ESPN last week. You're telling me you're actually confident with a 31 winning percentage. You're confident in your job security, and this was before Gar Forman was fired. Just so everyone knows that. In order for the Bulls to be playoff contenders, Jim Boylan needs to go. The reason for that being is you have players on ESPN like Ryan Arcidiacono. I'm sorry about that. This is a quote from him directly. We are doing a lot of running. We're getting up and down the floor. I can't emphasize enough. We are doing a lot of running. I think we'll be getting in better shape. Okay, obviously he's going to say that to an ESPN reporter because he's not going to trash his team or his coach. So let's get back to this. Boylan is the exact same coach that actually led a practice after a back-to-back game. That is absolutely unheard of in the NBA. And after that was actually planned, the players, I've never heard of this either, they actually formed a protest against Boylan. And let me tell you this, the Bulls tied, and this is Boylan's 3rd game as head coach. They lost by 56 points at home to the Celtics, and that tied an NBA record. Therefore, fire Boylan, and hopefully you can get back together. Back to you guys now. Let's see what you have.
I'm pretty sure Boylan got an extension after going like 17.
Yeah, he was 17-41 and gets a contract extension. Don't forget about that.
Yes. So that just shows how mad this entire Bulls GM and franchise is that they're giving this man more time to lose. I mean, their records from 2018 to 2020, last 3 years, 27-55, 22-60, 22-43. They're only going down, and they're trying to. Or this is when the rookies are supposed to be improving, and this is not the time to be saying that we're going to be having a chance to have a comeback. There's not a chance to even say we even have a chance at the playoffs. I mean, when you go in 22-43, there is no chance. Yes, you guys magically had a chance when you guys had the Bulls team, when you got Rose and all them, when you guys went from a horrible record, you guys switched the 2 records and were going off as soon, and that's when they had made that miraculous playoff run. But yes, that was a miracle. Whoever you have on this team is just there's no need for a miracle. There is no one to carry this team on except for Zach LaVine, who wants out. What if Zach LaVine leaves? This team's gonna be worse than the Hornets, and that's the Hornets. I mean, as you said, all they have is Terry Rozier. Who can you name? If you're someone who doesn't watch the NBA as much as me, or kind of like me, if you go and look, if you get rid of Zach LaVine, who can you name on this Bulls team? Nobody. And that's the problem when you're trying to make a rebuild. You're supposed to try and build these people's names. You're supposed to have stars coming up. No, you're supposed to build. They even have their own G League team that they could try and build players out of. And they're still struggling to do that too. They have plenty of opportunities to get these people to try and build their way up into star potential. And they have had none of that in the last few years. And that is because of coaching like Jim Boylan. And as long as I see Jim Boylan in this system for the Bulls, I don't really see them going anywhere. Because this is just a disaster, and it's just going to continue to be a disaster, like I said.
I think that with the changing of the guard as general manager, I think will also come with the changing of the guard as head coach. I don't think Boylan sticks around at all. I think when the NBA season returns, if and when it returns, Boylan will not be part of the organization. I think that it's time for some change here in Chicago. They're going to bring it. And I think that this will not help the team, however, very much because they need to get something good out of the draft, which they failed to do multiple times now, number one. Number two, I just feel like the Bulls don't have the necessary tools to try and recruit players in free agency like an Anthony Davis, like a Victor Oladipo or somebody like that. They don't have an attractive enough offer to get those players to come to Chicago. Who wants to be on the Chicago Bulls on a franchise right now that appears to be on the brink of self-destructing?
Yeah, you're not wrong, Matt, here at all. I mean, let's be honest here. I remember Anthony Davis. There was a topic on ESPN, I believe, last summer saying Anthony Davis wanted to go back home to play for the Bulls instead of playing for the Lakers. Who on earth would leave the palm trees in Los Angeles, California to go play in the Windy City to an organization which is just falling apart day by day? So there's a good point right there. Their draft picks, their first-round picks in Wendell Carter Jr. and Lauri Markkanen in the last couple of years. Yeah, they've shown promise. Lauri Markkanen is definitely. Wendell Carter Jr., if he could stay on the floor, maybe he can prove more. But other deals have not panned out as many people have hoped. We take a look at Jabari Parker. Halfway into the 2019 season, they signed him to a 2-year deal worth $40 million. What was that about? He wasn't that good, and I don't think he deserved that money. So instead of talking about how bad this team is, maybe we should talk about how they can improve. So here's something that I think is something very interesting, could raise a couple of eyebrows, but it's something to think about. You trade Lauri Markkanen and Otto Porter Jr. for DeMar DeRozan on the Spurs.
That is a very, very good idea. I mean, DeMar DeRozan has been someone who's just been struggling in San Antonio, and he's been needing a new home. The only problem is really the Windy City. Is Chicago the real home for him? But giving him an opportunity to run the offense once again, because let's be honest, and on the Spurs, he hasn't been really running the offense. He's been kind of all by himself. He's not getting the ball when he wants to. He's not being able to shoot it when he wants to. And now giving him an opportunity to be able to go and do that in Chicago with all these brand new rookies where he could teach them and give them more star potential is a very smart idea. And getting rid of these players who have been struggling and getting rid of a bunch of cap space like Lauri Markkanen and the other guy you said, what was his name? Did you say Parker?
No, I said Otto Porter Jr.
Otto Porter Jr., yeah. So getting rid of those players. Yes, you're giving away young talent for another player who's out of their prime, so to speak. But giving him a new chance to revive his career, giving him a chance to maybe go get back into his prime is definitely some kind of a chance. I think giving a new GM, give him the opportunity to do something like that and get rid of, obviously, Jim Boylan and give him a new head coach that some players that will, or at least attract some players that want to come and play for the Bulls, because nobody wants to play them, let's be honest, or play for them, let's be honest. At this point, no one wants to come here. But it's those players like DeMar DeRozan that are struggling in their situation where they are in their home right now, giving them an opportunity to revive their careers or wherever they are struggling and be able to come to these younger teams and help to hopefully try and change their whole situation is definitely a smart idea. And that's why I like the idea of it.
I'm going to take the other side of this. I disagree with this. I don't think this is a good trade for Chicago, and I'll give you one reason why, or 2 words. Zach LaVine. I think that when you put a player of DeMar DeRozan's caliber and Zach LaVine, what is their main strength? Driving to the basket and finishing. And when you put both of them, and they're both shooting guard small forward players, if you put them both on the same team, I feel like it's not going to mesh very well. And you're trading away a piece of your future in Lauri Markkanen, and your only real true sharp shooter, I'm not going to put LaVine in that category, and Otto Porter, for DeMar DeRozan, a guy who is about to reach the end of his prime, start falling a bit off into that category. And I don't think this trade makes a lot of sense for Chicago. So I don't think they should do it.
You're not wrong at all about that in that sense. I mean, I get Lauri Markkanen's supposed to be a top of the future. Obviously, he's really struggled in Boylan's system, but I'll tell you this. Whoever they decide to hire as their next coach, if that happens to be the case, maybe give him a couple of games and see if he is like struggling and just falling off, maybe then trade him for something. But I get it. Like, we'll take Chris Dunn, for example. Him and LaVine do not play well. They just don't. That's why Chris Dunn needs to leave as well, because I don't think they play with each other. I think Kobe White, especially. Kobe White's a great player. He will definitely stay on this franchise. He was on a hot streak before even the season went on hiatus, but I really think he's a good part of their future for sure. And maybe the Bulls can maybe trade something for like Fred VanVleet, for example, in the Raptors for like a power forward, because they're lacking in that position too.
That's an interesting thought of the Fred VanVleet one. I think that what the Bulls lack most and what they need to go for is a serviceable is like right now in their prime point guard, somebody who can really help the franchise right now build a foundational piece for a top playmaker who's a top facilitator as well. I don't disagree with Fred VanVleet. I just don't think he'd be the perfect fit for this team because he's not really like a head-on facilitator. I think a player such as let me think about this one for a second. If John Wall can ever get healthy, I've always thought he would be a great fit with Chicago. Mike Conley might not be a bad idea either because when you look at Donovan Mitchell in Utah, he fits better, in my opinion, as a point guard. So why not try and flip Conley to Chicago, see how that works? There's plenty of options out there. I just don't know if a Van Vliet or a DeRozan-type player makes a massive improvement on this team.
Yeah, it just goes back to the GM that just got hired. It's just like building a culture now in Chicago because they've lacked that the last couple of years because it's really just been Zach LaVine. Like, you got to be able to attract players to come play in the Windy City so that way you can actually build something on Zach LaVine because you're wasting his prime years on stuff that's not improving at all.
They are definitely lacking, especially no matter what players they get. The situation is they're just not going to just magically just start winning. They have way too many holes in their entire system and their entire team that, yes, a Van Vliet or yes, Mike Conley will help. But at least from Mike Conley's standpoint, is he's only got a few more years before he's going to be retiring. And yes, with all those, like these guys are getting old. And yes, bringing in these veterans will help. But I think they need to continue building this younger talent that they have because obviously Lauri Markkanen, in my personal opinion, did not work. And I think, compared to what you said, I think he should be gone. Find someone that find some better younger talent that they can get, and maybe even include some picks, but put them in the later rounds, and hopefully find someone in the draft, or even just get rid of Lauri Markkanen for a draft pick, so they could try and reset and find someone else to replace him because he obviously is not working in this system. And unless they find a head coach that can put him into this system to have him start working, I don't think they're going to be – I don't think Lauri Markkanen's in the future plans for this. And that's why I also think adding all these older people won't help. And maybe a Fred VanVleet will work with Kobe White and all them, putting the two of them together. But in my personal opinion, I think Lauri Markkanen should really be gone. And that's why – and I think that's it. There's really nothing else that the Bulls could really do. I think that's the first thing they really should start off doing.
Lauri, it depends, like Matt said. He had a really good point. He has to have the right coach. He has definitely regressed from last year. I'm not going to lie about that. But it really depends on the system he's playing in, like you also mentioned. He has to have the right coach. He is not going to succeed in Boylan's system. There's been plenty of time, and he just has not succeeded within that system. So if they happen to hire a new coach and he's not fitting within that system, then yes, probably trade him for a draft pick or another player that can succeed in Chicago.
Next up, we're going to be discussing how Bill O'Brien is just gone mad, and he continues to make more wild trades that are spicing up the NFL, but this time he decided to trade with the Los Angeles Rams for Brandon Cooks. So, Matthew, I'm going to let you start off with this one and give your grade on this trade.
All right, let's start with Houston on this one because this should be more entertaining. I don't know if F- is a grade, but I honestly think this might be the kind of grade to give the Texans on this one. Because if it wasn't for a second-round pick, I guess I'd be okay with that. But you're literally trading your second-round pick that you got for the DeAndre Hopkins trade for Brandon Cooks. So you essentially just traded DeAndre Hopkins for Brandon Cooks. Somebody should really figure out what the hell is going wrong in Houston, and Bill O'Brien should be immediately fired, even though he can't fire himself. I desperately think they need a change in Houston. We said it last week. It's just gotten worse. Who knows? Maybe this week they'll try and trade for Odell Beckham Jr. As that whole rumor swirls around. If that happens, just game over. But Bill O'Brien really needs to step down. This team is only getting worse with his horrendous general managing skills. Leaving the coaching part out of it, just general manager, oh my God, the way he's running that position is horrific.
Yeah, I have to absolutely agree with you, and I'm going to just say this right here. Just imagine sitting at home, big old Bill O'Brien with his great double chin that is, not going to lie, is one of the greatest things. he's sitting here just like this, like all of us, has way too much time on his hands, just munching out his food like it's no other thing. But the thing is, he doesn't realize that, yes, he has power, but his decisions are beyond him, okay? Let me swallow this real quick. Too hard to swallow, just like all of the decisions he's making. But Bill O'Brien is just on something. Whatever, I know I said this last time we talked about this, and last time, whatever he is on, or I would like to be on whatever he is on, because whatever logic is going through his mind is just baffling. The stuff that he's doing, just giving away players like it's nothing. I pulled up the stat. He got rid of DeAndre Hopkins, which last year Hopkins was second in targets, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. And because all he wanted was more money. And to replace him, they decided to get rid of old Randall Cobb, who's useless, and he's old, and he's been in the league for too long. He's a slot receiver that's way smaller than him, can't do anything. And instead they say, oh, Randall Cobb is going to be good. We're also going to bring back Cooks, who Cooks has been traded from 4 different teams. The only thing he's known for is getting knocked out in the Super Bowl, completely blacked out after he gets destroyed. I mean, he's gotten knocked out more times than he's won Super Bowls. He's got knocked out 2 times in the playoffs.
5 concussions. 5 concussions.
Yeah. You tell me that's a good replacement for the best wide receiver in the league? And then Cooks, as I was showing the stats before, Cooks is 19th in targets, 11th in receiving yards, and 12th in receiving touchdowns. That is not a replacement. That is just a minor little Band-Aid on top of like the gigantic wound that he has, that he's been destroying this entire franchise. You could call this a dictatorship. I mean, eating this banana, he does not give a shit. Like flying finger licking, I can't say the word because we gotta stay demonetized. He doesn't care, but apparently to him, it's a good idea. I mean, he's just wasting Deshaun Watson's career. It's just unbelievable to me, but this is Bill O'Brien in a nutshell.
Oh my God, I'm not gonna lie. I loved listening to that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sit here and say I didn't. I liked that. But yeah, Bill O'Brien needs to seriously look himself in the mirror and saying, am I the king or am I a GM? Think about it. All right, so you guys talked about the Texans. Good. We'll talk about the Rams after I'm done speaking. But I'm going to say this. Another disaster for the Texans. And for the Rams, this was just an admission of failure. So I'll talk about that when we talk about the Rams. But for the Texans, I give them a D on this. Why? Well, because they did not solve their self-created problem by trading for Brandon Cooks. Simple as that. Now, I understand why the Rams did it, which we'll get into. But you need to take in consideration here, the Texans literally just traded away their second-round pick for Brandon Cooks. First of all, this year's draft is very deep in wide receiver. So why didn't you just get a wide receiver? And you also just traded away a pick that could have helped you for the future, let alone just this year. But you need to realize in Brandon Cooks, concussions. They are a serious concern for his long-term future. He suffered 2 brain injuries in 25 days last season, and he has 5 known concussions across his 6 pro seasons, including the one that knocked him out of the Super Bowl, like Ethan just mentioned. So I don't understand why they even thought of this. I mean, yeah, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. When he's healthy, he ranked 4 1,000-yard seasons with 3 different teams from 2015 to 2018. We get that. He's pretty productive when he's on the field. But giving up that second-round pick, it just doesn't make much sense to me. What makes it even worse, just let alone giving up a second-round pick, is how much money you need to invest on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, let's think about this for a second. They gave Randall Cobb a 3-year, $27 million deal with $18 million guaranteed from Houston. Okay, based on the rest of the market, the last time I checked, Randall Cobb's value is realistically around $5 million. Not 27, not 18, $5 million. And get a load of this too. The Texans will pay Cobb and Cooks $38.7 million over the next 2 seasons, which is ironic because Hopkins reportedly wanted a contract extension worth between $18 million and $20 million per season. You want to explain that to me, Billy O'Brien? Because I don't understand.
Here's the biggest problem with this, real quick, is the fact that the Texans essentially gave up their future and got back 2 washed-up receivers. Like, I don't understand.
None of us.
That's just the one. That's the one part that blows my mind.
It's because he was very bored at home.
Yeah.
Man is very good.
So now that we ripped on the Texans, tell me about the Rams. What grade do you give them?
I honestly think the Rams. Oh, you go ahead. Go ahead, Ethan.
All right, for the Rams. I mean, Rams overall, I think it's an all right deal. I mean, the Rams, in my opinion, are turning into they're getting into the same situation that these Texans. They're reaching that what the heck are you doing kind of a level. I mean, they got rid of their star running back Todd Gurley for a few picks. Yes, he was injured, and yes, he wasn't the same as he was in the prime. But getting rid of him is a big part of that offense in the Rams offense. And that's going to put more pressure on Jared Goff, and we know Jared Goff is not very good under pressure. And that also leads that they're losing another wide receiver for their deep threats. They still have Cook, they still have Robert Wood, and then they have Reynolds, the guy who replaced Cook when he was injured. I think he's going to replace Cooks once he's gone. But they have those 3. But besides that, with how injury prone these 3 wide receivers have been, what's going to happen if one of them gets injured again? They don't have a replacement this time. And that's why this offense is going to definitely take a huge plummet because they lost Todd Gurley, they lost Cooks. Who else are they going to lose? Because these assets are huge. And to this Rams team that was able to make the Super Bowl 2 years ago, they are not looking like a potential threat. Yes, the NFC West is going to be extremely stacked this year too, which could lead to a downfall in this Rams team because their entire team was built. They were all veterans, and last year was supposed to be the year they won it, and they didn't even make the playoffs, I don't think. So the decisions that they're making were very risky. They were high risk, high reward, and they turned out to be bad, and that risk was too high for them because they're definitely struggling. That's why as getting rid of Cooks, giving away more money. Yes, the Rams, despite getting rid of Cooks, still have to eat up $21.8 million in dead money. They still have to pay that much money. That's going to be going to nobody but to Cooks' bank account. So that's not going to be good for them at all. Yes, they got rid of Cooks, and yes, they got rid of a few more $1 million they would have had to pay him. But I think it's a lot worse. It's not one of the better deals. I think, yes, the Texans got an F- or even a G for their grade. But I think I have to give them at least the Rams at least like a C or even a D. Like a D+, I'd give them for this grade. They got rid of Cooks, but for a second-round pick, a star running back you paid $5 million, put on a 5-year $80 or $65 million deal that you're paying him a bunch of money, and now you're going to be just getting a second-round pick back. That's it. It's not really much, and that's why I don't think it was a very good grade.
All right, I actually completely disagree. I think this was a good trade for the Rams because when you look at what DeAndre Hopkins originally got traded for, the Rams were, I think, looking for a 3rd or 4th round pick in return for Brandon Cooks, and they were able to get a 2nd round pick out of it. They have to be pleased with that. They still get a 2nd round pick in a loaded wide receiver draft class. They can take a receiver with that pick and develop him from the bottom up and see if they can create another star next to Cooper Kupp and their new rising tight end in Gerald Everett. I think that this was the perfect move for the Rams. They needed to admit their failures, which was a great word of choice by Luca earlier. Admit that this experiment failed in a sense, and they had to try and go in a different direction with it. They did the right thing in trading Cooks, and they got an even better return than I thought they were going to get. I give them a B+.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong on what the Rams are receiving. They got a very good deal out of this. I'm not going to lie. The reason I'm saying it's a mission of failure for the Rams is because of the GM, Les Snead. He's the one that really failed. And this is why I'm giving the Rams a C in this trade. It's not because they got rid of Brandon Cooks and they got a 2nd round pick. That's not why. It's simply because of Les Snead, the GM. Reason for that being, it's because it's the end to yet another disaster contract extension for him. It's simple as that. They're paying, let's see, I think Ethan just mentioned it.
21.8.
Yeah. So yeah, you did do that. So not only do they have that for Brandon Cooks, but they have $33 million altogether with Cooks and Gurley in dead money. So that's not good. That's a whole failure on his part. But the reason this is just a good, just bad for Les Snead is because he did a horrible job in extending these contracts. I mean, you should have thought about this. I mean, yeah, you made the Super Bowl in 2018. I get that. But you paid way too much. Way too much. Now, I get they're in a desperate cap situation, and they're down their first round picks in this year and next year after the Jalen Ramsey trade, but you kind of failed miserably doing those contract extensions. They still got Higbee, Gerald Everett, Cooper Kupp, and like you said, I feel like they're going to succeed with those guys. But on the field, I feel like it's a good trade, but manager-wise, awful.
Yeah, I mean, I see that's what I'm trying to get Matthew to understand, is that this was not one of the better trades, because they are in huge money crisis. They don't have money to pay all these players. And what happens next year when they're still playing all these players, all this money, they're not going to be able to get the signings. They have a hole in the running back right now, whole situation. And this team is falling at the wrong time because their entire rest of their division is on their way up. So falling right now for them is probably the worst possible thing that can happen. Yes, maybe another draft pick along with this second-round draft pick. And I do agree with your wide receiver part. Yes, they can draft another wide receiver. But does drafting another wide receiver fix the void of that running back, fix the void of all the money that they can't really spend on anyone else because they're paying everyone way too much money? And they're also a very old team. Their defense-wise, they're a very old team. And they also got rid of a ton of assets. They got rid of Littleton. Their entire linebacker core is gone. They started trading. They're, as you said, admitting failure. They're attempting to be, I wouldn't say a rebuild, but they're getting rid of all their star players, hopefully for draft picks, to get more younger players to fix in to make this a younger team.
They're trying to retool a little bit. I wouldn't say tank, retool a little bit. You know? Yeah,
they're trying to retool their whole situation, because they have star players, yes, but they're just missing that last little bit of oomph, or that last asset that they need to move on to the next step, because they did make it to the playoffs, but they lost all those, or they made it to the Super Bowl, but they did lose a ton of those assets, and they took the risk with Jalen Ramsey, hoping to see if that experiment will work out. But with all these, how much money he's just throwing around, this GM, how he's just throwing money at anybody and everybody, that's most of the time it leads to recipes for disaster, and that's why this is not a good deal for either team. I mean, yes, they got some wide receivers, and yes, they got this, but overall, from a logic perspective, this was not a good idea.
You said exactly what I was going to say, a lose-lose situation. I don't think this trade boosts either team. In fact, I actually am starting to think that this trade doesn't benefit anybody. But the Rams still get rid of a guy you could see was falling in the rotation and the production levels for this team. So they trade him away before his value decreases even further. But at the same time, they now have a giant money crisis. Whereas for the Texans, they still cannot solve the problem that they made for themselves by trading DeAndre Hopkins in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Texans will be in the basement for a while. How about that? That's a good way.
We'll forget about them. They'll be back in a few years.
That's just the thing that gets me about this trade. It's just that what the GM did, to me, like I said, it's the whole financial crisis that they put themselves into after the Super Bowl. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a bad deal, really. It's just the money aspect of it. Otherwise, why not?
Finally, we're going to be going over Christian McCaffery, a running back for the Carolina Panthers' brand new deal that will make him the highest paid running back in the entire NFL. He's going to be paid $16 million over the next 4 years for a total of $64 million for a running back, which is huge. So, do you guys believe that Christian McCaffery was overpaid?
Absolutely not, because you have the best running back, in my opinion, in the NFL, in Christian McCaffery.
Okay.
I think that this team is just so good. And, well, no, not the team. He is just so good that I think that McCaffrey needed to get all the money he could get. The Panthers don't have anybody truly that they need to pay apart from McCaffrey, and throw him all the money that he deserves, because the way he was able to fool defenses last season, something tells me that will stay the same this season. There was no failure here with McCaffrey, in my opinion.
Yeah, and as one of my idols, I'm gonna start off with this. As one of my idols who have been watching, he put this into perspective after this deal came out. He said, this little white guy out of Stanford now the face of the Carolina Panthers. If you guys can name who that is Pat McAfee, the guy who I love watching, the guy who's been idolizing him. But I just love that statement because he's very, very true. Usually you never see any white running backs. No, not to put race into it, but like white running backs are not really the best in the NFL. And this little guy out of Stanford, like he said, is now the best guy in the NFL, like best running back in the NFL. Now he's the face of the Carolina Panthers out of nowhere. This is in like the money, going back to the money, this is the money that like running backs dreamed of getting. Le'Veon Bell held out an entire season to try and get paid this much money, and he didn't even he got like way less than he was supposed to. Even Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys, who have money coming out of their ears, he didn't get this much money. Now, this is an extremely well-deserved like bit of money towards the guy who carried me the entire way through the playoffs of my fantasy league and attempted to the championship, which I finally won my first ever fantasy championship. Thank you, Chistian McCaffery, for doing that. But that's why I please him and I love him so much because of what he's done. He is absolutely amazing. He had like by far one of the best years of a running back, in my opinion, I've seen in a very, very long time. I'll start putting some stats. McCaffery had 287 rushing attempts for basically 1,400 rushing yards and 15 touchdowns, 0 fumbles throughout that. Not only did he have that, he also set this is the first time in history that a running back has had 1,000 plus rushing yards and 1,000 plus receiving yards. He had more receiving yards. He was 23rd in receiving. That is above Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill. Those are star wide receivers that are getting paid basically more than him, and he had a better receiving year than they did. I mean, at least from a receiving yards perspective, but just the amount of just seeing all these stats and just seeing how he performed, especially last year. I mean, I always had my eye on him, especially because of my fantasy-wise. He was my number one guy carrying me throughout the entire playoffs along with Lamar Jackson. But though between him, it was just an outstanding, and that's why there was only one man that really could have paid for Carolina, like you said, Matt, and it had to be Chistian McCaffery because they have no really money, or they're not really paying anyone else big bucks. And that's why he really deserves it because in order for Carolina to keep him here, they needed to prove that they wanted him to stay. And giving him this much money shows that they like him and they want him for a few more years.
Yeah, I mean, Ethan, thank you for sharing your fantasy football. That was much appreciated.
Yes.
But yeah, Chistian McCaffery deserves this money, okay? He is sensational, and I'm just really happy for him that he finally got this money. We know he's a Stanford graduate. I'm going to read you guys some numbers. He had 5,443 scrimmage yards through his first 3 seasons, and that is considered the 5th best ever. So that's insane. Bottom line is, instead of just being a running back, this is the part I think Ethan was alluding to, but I don't think he said it like directly. What I like to call Chistian McCaffery, he's not just a running back. He's an all-purpose back, as I like to call him. And what he brings to the table is 1,000 rushing yards, 1,000 receiving yards for 100 receptions, and you just look at what he just brings to the table even more. All-purpose yards, he has 2,392 yards from scrimmage, 19 touchdowns, and 403 touches. This guy is absolutely spectacular, if I ever had to say something. He's been the face of the Carolina Panthers franchise for the first season, or the last season and a half. And like I said, he is not just a running back. He's an all-purpose back. And by the way, it's not just he earns the money because he's sensational, like football perspective, but he's only 23. He's not 26. He's not 28, and he's not approaching 30, which now is apparently the death now for running backs. And he can ball, okay? He has great character, and when you take all these factors into consideration, he is all-purpose, not one-dimensional. He's the face of the franchise. Now that Cam Newton is gone, he puts in the work as a football player should, and he's trustworthy. At the end of the day, he got what he deserves.
Yeah, and in my opinion, out of anything, this man got snubbed from MVP. I mean, yes, Lamar Jackson had a great year, but if you look from a logical perspective from a running back standpoint, this was unbelievable. If there was a running back MVP of the year, this guy should have won it by a landslide. Yes, Derrick Henry had a great year, but if you look from a stat perspective, this guy was unbelievable. I mean, I left a few more stats I want to include in here. Is that he was reception-wise, he was second in the entire league in receptions. That includes wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs. He was only behind the Michael Thomas, who had an unbelievable year for wide receiver too. But having a man that with that many receptions, that showed they ran the offense to him. That shows that he's reliable. He could catch the ball. He has plenty. He has an all-purpose running back, like you said. But not only is he an all-purpose running back, he could also run. Like, has a bunch of rushing yards. I know I said he had 1,400 rushing yards. But if you take that and look at compared to all the other running backs in the entire league, he's third overall in rushing too. He's basically second overall in receiving in the entire league and third overall in the rushing. That is unbelievable for a running back to have such a feat just like that. I mean, he was only behind King Henry and Nick Chubb, who also had great years for themselves. But having a player like that with that much caliber to be able to do that much, like I said, I believe he deserved MVP not only for all the stuff he's done, but for carrying my fantasy football team. But this is well-deserved money overall, and that he really deserves it, and that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I think that the one thing we always forget about Christian McCaffery is that there really wasn't anybody else on that Panthers offense who made a giant impact last season. Yes, DJ Moore was a very good wide receiver, and they had at least a foundation. But Christian McCaffery absolutely carried this offense last season. When you have a quarterback such as Kyle Allen and Will Grier running your offense, it comes down to your running back in McCaffery to carry the team, and he did. And they did the best that they could given the situation that they were in. McCaffery deserved every cent of the new deal he had.
Yeah, there's nothing to disagree about that at all. He definitely led that offense last year. He led it the year before. I'm just hoping Carolina brings in some weapons, maybe via draft or maybe free agency that maybe we have not expected. But I'm hoping Teddy Bridgewater getting a fresh start in Carolina and Christian McCaffery being the running back and all-purpose back, hopefully. They'll definitely be able to succeed expectations from last season.
Thank you guys so much for making it all the way to the end of this video, and thank you to Luca Vitale for joining us on our 15th episode of Just Talking About Sports. If you're interested in Luca's channel, it'll be linked in the description, and to show you guys appreciation, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.